Hello folks, this is Mike and we are doing a review today of Jay's Days of Volume 2 by Jason Marcy. As you can see, the subtitle is 30 Cavities and Hemorrhoids, Oh My. And more of my life as a cartoon. So if you're not familiar with Jason Marcy, if you're not familiar with the Jay's Days series, it's an autobiographical graphic novel series and comic that Jay has done for several decades off and on. And this is a great example of one of those collections. So this particular copy has a little bit of wear. It has been read multiple times. You can see the corners are a little worn. That's nobody's fault but mine. Got the ISBN number. This is from 2002, so it's considered vintage now. I was surprised myself when I found out anything over 20 years is considered vintage, and so it's kind of weird that even some of my work, my early work, is considered vintage now. Of course, Jay dedicates this to his wife, Christine, and this is before he had kids. Now, right off the top of the bat, I will let you know that I actually used to work with Jay on comics. I used to publish some of his work that came after this book. And just without being too biased, I feel like, when you read these autobiographical comics, you get a good insight into the way his mind works and how it's often ruled by anxiety. But what it doesn't reflect, unless you know him in person, is just how big of a heart this guy has. And the reason he has so much anxiety is because he really does care about how everybody around him feels. And he's a really good guy and often an unsung hero of Canadian independent comics. And so I just wanted to mention that and give a shout out. So here's an example of a page. So you'll notice he has a very strong kind of thick outline style for his line, a thick line, but he knows how to use the smaller lines and thinner lines for details like the arm hair and the shine on the glass. It's not any way an indication of lack of knowledge or skill. Also lettered by Joe Meyer, another great often unsung hero of indie comics. If you haven't met Joe, I'm pretty sure he's still doing conventions, I believe in the States, in the New York area. I could be wrong, but again, he's got some great work out there as well. And in this case, we've just got a one-page comic strip that kind of sets the tone if you're not familiar with the series, and it's about Jay sitting there thinking of things to be worried and anxious about. And since this volume is particularly dedicated towards the horrors of aging, you can see how he explains how he's got a bald head now, and relates stories about when he was younger, when he had a full head of hair. He even had a ponytail at one time, and essentially just dealing with the fact that he's aging and not wanting to be confused for a skinhead. And that it's really about balding, and that's why he just shaves it as opposed to, being a skinhead. Jay often relates stories about places he worked, and one of them was one of the largest record stores in Hamilton, or I can't remember if it was Hamilton or Oshawa. I'd have to read this over again, but I'm pretty sure it was Oshawa, actually, because that's where Jay is originally from. And they don't live there anymore. Here's a story with him and Christine. And this book takes place before they had kids, when Jay was in his early 30s. Again, this is from 2002, so some time has passed since then. It's actually crazy. I've never met his kids in person. I've only seen pictures, but I've seen pictures literally on Facebook from when they were babies to now they're adults. I think one of them is married. I feel like that just gives you an insight into the fact that he's a real human being, and I think we overlook that a lot in comics. And I think it's really easy to go online and harass or criticize or crap on someone, but I think you need to remember that real human beings are behind the comics that you enjoy. And he does a great job of reminding you that just with the way he tells stories about his own insecurities. And that's what I find is really great about Jay's storytelling work, is that it's never about alienating or judging someone else. It's always about how his own mind interprets everything in an insecure way, or in an anxious way, which means it generally goes back to, what am I doing wrong and what is wrong with me, and just insecurity about the perception of others. Really good stuff. Like the effort he puts into the cross hatching for this couch, for example, is great, and really good work on storytelling. And like, I love that. I mean, this is, digital effects were available at this time, but not to the extent they are now. But you know, you could easily fake this shadow digitally now, but you know, this is where someone's put the effort in, with cross hatching, and it really does make the characters pop off of the couch. But it's all just by hand with pen and ink, and a real skill set and dedication that not everyone exhibits these days. He also knows how to do a splash page. Like, he switches it up. He knows about page layout and not making things boring or static. This is a story that takes place in 2000. So again, we're looking at some vintage retro stuff, right? And you're not going to get those references if you're too young, but it gives you a peek into a world. I think that younger generations often fail to appreciate the fact that Gen X, let's say, grew up in an era where we went from no internet to everything internet, and the differences in life between then and now. Not to detract from the subject matter of this story, though, because I do remember it, and I do recall the seriousness of it. This is a story about one of Jay's cats getting sick. I just lost my page. Here we go. And just dealing with, you know, a pet that you've loved aging, and suffering health problems, and how you deal with your emotions and the morality of making the choice to end or not end the life of a pet that's suffering, and just the anxiety and the mental anguish that he's going through watching this beloved pet suffering, and how to go about dealing with it and overcoming it. And it's very sad at times and very emotional, and I think that's what makes it very relatable to people, the grief and the anger of the situation, and how it really does affect them. And I think we fall into the trap in society of trying to portray the tough guy who isn't affected, and people are surprised when they read a story like this, where, you know, it's a big, tough, strong, bald man who is weeping over the loss of a pet. And I think that's something that we need to encourage more. I think his work delivers a level of humanity and relatability that is often overlooked for and by even other autobiographical comic creators, overlooked for flash. You know, sometimes people are trying to do that superhero Marvel DC tryout with their own autobio story, and they mimic that storytelling style where there's not a lot of characterization or detail, and it kind of just skips over major points. But Jay's work really brings you into the minutia of life and the detail, and that's what makes it different. That's what makes it actually quite engaging. And seeing what he thinks about in the shower, it's just all kinds of great things that I can say about this work. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I'm not going to give you every detail. I believe, I could be wrong, I believe that's Ron Gravel, another comic artist who was also a publisher of Jay's at the time this was made. But even, just because he works in a cartoony style, people often underestimate animated or cartoony style artists, but there is a level of knowledge and skill. You can see how he always expertly has that kind of visual cue that he's got a shiny bald head. Like, he can use a very thin line for things like sweat and books that he's reading and characters in the distance. So he has great control of his line width, and I really like the way he does the crosshatch shading, and I don't think you see that often enough, and it really lends itself well not only to his style, but to remind people that this is handmade, it's not digital, and that a real artist with real hands and a real life used a marker or a pen and ink to make this artwork, that it's not just something that is easily spit out or rendered by a digital program. Sorry, I'm starting to laugh because this is the story about where he first develops hemorrhoids at the age of 30, and just how irritating they are, and how he's worried he's going to die because, his ass is bleeding. And that's a story I can relate to. The first time I ever had a hemorrhoid, I thought I had cancer and I was going to die too. So again, real stories from life that people can relate to, and I think that's what makes it a great choice or a great read for not just all ages, basically anyone over 17, but both, like, for men and women, or however you identify. Like, it's not like where a lot of comics are sort of geared towards the male audience. I think this type of story and the way he tells it sort of transcends the old-fashioned notion of like male and female or boy and girl comics. These are comics for adults who can relate. Also inked and lettered by Jeremy Capozzi, this story, which is another, I believe he's Canadian, if I remember correctly. I think that's how they know each other and how they started working together, because they've done a few comics together. And I can't think of the name of one, and I've got some around here right now. I just don't know where they're at the moment. But again, another unsung hero of Canadian indie comics. And again, great biographical tales. And like, he's got to sit on a cushion on his stoop so that his hemorrhoids aren't irritated. And at this point, he's working in the pasta shop owned by his father-in-law. And then we have another Ken story where it's a flashback of one of his co-workers at the CD or at the music store in Oshawa from before his days at the pasta shop. And all sorts of personal tales of visiting family, visiting home, the death and loss of loved ones. I don't want to give all this away. Siblings and relationship issues, and as he's getting older and hadn't been taking care of his teeth and realizes he needs to go to a dentist. All kinds of stuff. Anyway, this is really cool book. Very nostalgic. Here's a story about just Nirvana and Kurt Cobain and how it affected him at the time, and lots to enjoy here, and very much well worth the read. I don't want to intergender interactions and relationships at work, and the awkwardness of younger generations being much more open and flirtatious, and drawing the line between coworker and your personal life. And there's always these flashback stories too, back to when Jay had hair and was, a stylish young ne'er-do-well, or so to speak, in the 80s. And just some really good, relatable stories. And I think this makes it a really great example of I just flipped by there, the Twin Towers story. I don't want to show too much of that. I think it's better if you read it yourself. But just a really great example of well done, humorous, autobiographical slice of life comics. There's some previews of other stuff in the back. Actually, I think that was a story by another comic creator about the passing of his cat from earlier as well. So really good book. Now, if you like the looks of this, you can look for it online. It's pretty hard to find. You might be able to find it directly from Jay if his website is still up. I have not, we haven't kept in touch as much as I would like over the years, so I don't know what he's got going right now. But I do happen to have this as well as a number of his other books together in a lot on my eBay page. If you like that and if you're interested, you can check that out. You can get 4 of his books all at once. I know I have a 5th one around here somewhere, and when I have time to inventory it, I'll probably just add it to that lot. By the time you see this, that might have happened, it might not have. But either way, even if you don't want to get it through my eBay page, it is worth checking out and trying to find if you can. Very hard to find, very rare, very limited print run, but worth every penny wherever you get it. If you do want to see if it's available in my eBay store, you can do that by going to mikegagno.ca. The link will be in the description. And you can see some of the books I've created and link over to my eBay page where I sell stuff from my personal collection that I've gotten my enjoyment out of and I've made available for others to get enjoyment out of as well. And this is one of them. And I promise you, if you like quirky, funny, angsty, true stories of the life of a comic creator and what goes on, this is a great series to check out. I really can't say enough about it, and I just actually mailed a package to Jay a few weeks ago, and I hope he's doing well, and I think you should find him and follow him on social media, and if he's doing a current web strip, you should follow it. I don't want to make this sound like an ad or a sponsorship, it's not, but my early days in comics, Jay was very much a role model to me, and I know he has helped so many new and upcoming artists. He's always the first to befriend and help and offer advice to new creators that he meets through conventions or online, and he never gives himself the credit he deserves. So he's a great guy, and he'll be the last one to tell you that. And his work is very well written and compelling and relatable, and I think it'll tug at your heartstrings no matter who you are. So I am honored to do a video review of his work on my YouTube channel, and I thank you very much for watching it. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time. Jay's Days. Look for it.